I'm really pleased to be joined on this gorgeous sunny day by Richard Sherwood. So, Richard, thanks for giving up your time this morning.
Thank you for having me. It's great to see you, Susie.
Pleasure. So a quick intro then, because we know each other well, but for anyone who's not familiar with your career to date, so very commercial CMO, and you've had experience across multiple sectors, so telco, FMCG, retail, travel, more recently entertainment, and gaming as well. So a wealth of experience, sort of 25 plus years, senior marketing experience, most recently Bally's Interactive. So for anyone who's not familiar with that brand, one of the world's leading entertainment companies. And prior to that, you've worked for some really well-known brands, EasyJet, Vodafone, B&Q, and Eurostar as well, amongst others. So a really fascinating background. I'm very grateful to you for joining today, because we do these so people can have a real insight to kind of how did you get where you are now? What was that journey like? And what insights can you share along the way? So if I may, can we dive in with the first one, which is understanding more about your career journey? What got you to this point and any standout moments along the way?
Absolutely. Well, I think the first thing to say is I studied business studies and marketing at Manchester University, so I was always interested in marketing. My first role was a relatively small business, and I set up a direct marketing team. But importantly, I also had some sales accounts to look after. And I always say to young marketers, if you can get some sales experience early in your career, that's a great thing to do, because you're very likely to work very closely with either the sales or the commercial team. But 3 years in, I wanted to go traveling. I was, pretty young at heart. I gave up my job and I took a year off, and I planned to spend 6 months of that year in Sydney, Australia, and I left 12 years later. So things don't always go in a straight line, often quite squiggly. And I spent the first 6 years of my time in Australia working for Bacardi Martini, a brilliant global business, still family owned. But what's important about Bacardi is they really understand brand health and how investment into building a healthy brand will deliver strong commercial results. And Bacardi as a brand in Australia had been in decline for 17 years. And the job at hand was to turn that brand round, which we were able to do. We launched Bacardi Breezer, that went on to become the number one selling ready-to-drink product within a year. Launched Bombay Sapphire and various other things. But I think 6 years in FMCG was, fast-moving consumer goods, but it felt quite slow. And I moved to telco, which really felt fast. My first 6 years at Vodafone were in Australia. I led initially a product team and then a consumer marketing function, accountable for revenue and margin, the product teams, CRM teams, go-to-market teams, and so on. And it was still my favorite 6 years of anywhere that I've worked. Vodafone Australia was a values-based organization, which means it had a very big stretching goal, but then importantly, knew how to balance a strategy for growth, a commercial strategy for growth, with a winning mindset and a winning culture. And, we had a great 6 years. We doubled the consumer revenue of the business within 3 of those 6 years. And I made, some lifelong friends and learned a lot along the way. I moved back to the UK with Vodafone. I spent a couple of years at Vodafone Group before spending 3 years at Vodafone Hungary. And Vodafone Hungary was a step change, a growth role for me, because I led the marketing team, but also the distribution and retail functions. And at the end of the 3 years, we were able to move the number 3 player in the market, Vodafone. It'd been a number 3 player in the market for 14 years to number 2. So it was a tough gig, but rewarding ultimately. A few more years at Vodafone Group, and after 12 years I left Vodafone to see what the world outside looked like, and I joined B&Q, a great British retailer. Yeah. I was always passionate about retail from my time at Vodafone, and by that point B&Q was nearly 50 years old, and the CEO at the time wanted to reinvent and relaunch the brand. And the next 2 years was working in a marketing function, leading a marketing function, which wasn't a commercial marketing function. So I needed to find a new, center of gravity. and actually was seen as the pretty pictures team internally. So it lacked some credibility. And we rebuilt the team over the next couple of years, put customer insights at the center of all of our decision making. I think did some great things. I learned again. It was a new learning experience for me. And at the end of that 2-year process, we were awarded the UK Marketing Team of the Year by the Chartered Institute of Marketing. So it was a great journey of building credibility internally, as well as trying to focus on driving footfall, which is all important in retail. I moved from B&Q to Eurostar, so new category, but I was always incredibly passionate about travel. I've lived in Germany and Hong Kong as a kid, and Hungary and Australia as an adult, but I loved traveling at a personal level. And Eurostar was nearly 25 years old. The new CEO wanted to deliver a step change to commercial performance, and I think that's something that I take a lot of energy from. Together with some of my peers, we developed something called the Supercharged Growth Strategy. So how do you take this brand that had taken 25 years to grow to $1 billion in revenue, and what would the plan look like that would grow its revenue by 50% in just 5 more years? In parallel, we relaunched the brand, relaunched the website. It was a great business, but unfortunately, coming into 2020, COVID struck. And if you were in the travel business as we were, most of our revenues disappeared. We had to hunker down. The majority of our team were furloughed, and it was tough times. And towards the end of that first year in COVID, myself and some of my exec colleagues unfortunately lost our jobs. And I think resilience really kicks in then. And looking forward and thinking what next. So I had the opportunity coming out of COVID to join EasyJet as an interim role, as a contract role. But how many times in your life will you get a chance to relaunch out of COVID one of Europe's biggest airlines? And I also worked on the exec of EasyJet Holidays, which at the time was a fledgling business, but has gone on to become a very important part of the EasyJet P&L. 15 months in, I was offered a role to stay. We relaunched both of those brands out of COVID, focused a lot on customer experience, which was very significant and very important to customers around COVID times. But I was also offered the opportunity to join Bally's Interactive. And digital has always been an incredibly important part of my career, from the early days of Vodafone, launching digital on your mobile services, to digital being a really important channel. Vodafone at the time representing 30% of sales, Eurostar represented 62% of sales, EasyJet 90% of sales, but I'd never worked in a fully digital business. And I think people will sometimes think twice about joining an iGaming or gambling business. But I knew some of the senior people within Bally's. I knew it was a very responsible business. I knew it had a very strong culture, and it was a logical choice for me. And I led a marketing team of about 140. We looked at everything from commercial strategy to a very big internal performance marketing function, CRM, product marketing and operations, marketing planning and delivery, and MarTech. So really quite broad. And I remember speaking to the boss who hired me at the time and said, "Look, are you sure I'm the right person for this role? I don't have iGaming experience. I haven't worked in a fully digital business." But what he said to me is, "Richard, we're looking for leadership above and beyond everything else." And I hope that's what I brought to that team. We had 2 years of double-digit growth, worked on great brands like Virgin Games, which we launched Bally Casino into the marketplace, and it was a great place to be. But Bally's decided to merge a couple of their geographical business units into one international interactive team. A couple of CMO roles had to go. Mine was one of them. And, it was a great ride. And now I'm in the space of having that in my kit bag in terms of experience and looking at what's next.
Wow, what a journey. I mean, from those early days out in Australia, which sounds like you had a lot of fun, some great brands and a wonderful environment, up until more recently with Bally's, and for you, what was a whole new sector, but you know, a business full of really, that's a big team and very talented people within there as well. You mentioned that when you asked that chief exec about you know, hiring, and the emphasis was on leadership. How do you lead teams through kind of transformational times or times of change? And that's what we've had in the last few years, isn't it, from an economic point of view? But leadership's one of your, you know, kind of key skills. How do you lead those teams?
I think there are a few things to say. That firstly, I like to lead with my leadership team, and I make that quite clear from joining any team that we're going to lead this team together. I think that's also an important way to bring teams together. You know, I led a team with 5 or 6 individual functions that perhaps had worked somewhat in silos. I think it's incredibly important that you work as one. I think then there are a few things to think about. The first one is, there a very clear commercial strategy for growth? Because I think that's a great leadership tool. Do you have something that you're all focused on? I think it's very easy for the performance marketing function to just think about their acquisition numbers, for the CRM function to just think about retention or churn numbers, for the brand team to just think about brand health. When at the end of the day, marketing teams are often, but not always, responsible for a bigger KPI. Yeah. You know, in my case and my recent case, it's revenue and margin. So what does the commercial strategy for growth look like that everyone is going to contribute to, and that you're going to stay in a conversation about on a regular basis to see how that plan is being delivered and see what wins you're making and where you need to repivot? So that's the first thing. Have a strong plan that everyone can get behind, that everyone can understand. The second thing is, do you have the right culture? And I'm a big fan of, as I mentioned, with the values-based organisation from Australia, balancing a commercial strategy for growth with a strong culture. And that's something I've always looked to build in my team, again, alongside my leadership members. And I think you know, the right culture becomes an energizer. It gives you the permission, it gives you the right mindset. The type of culture I really enjoy working on is the one that provides a growth mindset, a winning mindset, a emphasis on collaboration. And if you've got the right culture, it can encourage people to do more than they thought was possible. So strong strategy balanced with the right culture. And then I think the third thing, which is incredibly important, is communication. And there was a phrase that I picked up along the way: communicate, clarify, align. Whether it's the strategy or the culture or your commercial results, be in a regular conversation with your team, whether in my case that was fortnightly stand-ups or weekly Friday emails or quarterly planning sessions. Be in a regular conversation so you can communicate what it is you're trying to achieve. You can clarify where people have got questions, and you can align, and then you can just move forward and deliver. And I think if you do all of those things, great strategy, right culture, communicate, clarify, and align, you can really take your team and the broader team in an organization on a incredibly exciting growth journey. And it's a growth journey focused on both commercial growth and personal growth.
You've mentioned there something that I'm a big believer in, which is the growth mindset piece. And I'm always interested when we speak to the senior leaders. It's unsurprising that everybody has in common that very much growth mindset themselves, very positive. Do you have any kind of personal practices or recommendations or tips that you use to have developed that within yourself?
It's a natural part of me. I find it much more exciting to think about step change than think about status quo. Yeah. And I've said to people that I've worked with, to members of my team, you know, it's going to be boring because it's very comfortable to do the same thing you've always done. You know that you can get decent results, and why don't I just try it again? It's a comfortable place to be, but it's not exciting, and life is short. And you know, I think if you want to deliver step change, you're going to need to do things differently. And that's what I'm excited about. Step change, commercial step change, but also step change from personal growth point of view, because it's not interesting or exciting necessarily to do the same thing again and again and again. People get bored in their jobs, and if you want to get a different result, you're going to need to try to do things differently. So it's something that excites me, but I have needed to speak to team members, peers, colleagues about why I think that's the right approach. And you can get people excited by painting a picture of what the future could look like if you do things differently, if you have a growth mindset, if you're willing to try something new.
No, I'm with you all the way on that, and that's clearly how you end up getting the great commercial results. It's having a clear commercial strategy, good leadership, great communication. It's having that vision and driving forward. If you were looking back to kind of earlier years, what advice would you share now, Richard, with people who are looking at, kind of listening to this, hearing your journey, thinking, wow, that's really impressive. They're setting their sights on a CMO role. They might be a head of, or they might be a director at the moment. What advice would you share with them to help them achieve a CMO or chief customer officer role?
Great question. I think the first thing I would say is breadth of experience is really important. And that might mean that if you're in a marketing function and you're leading performance marketing, you need to get some experience about traditional media and brand. Or if you're in either of those functions, you need to get some experience in CRM and so on and so forth. So breadth of experience is important. And the challenge is, if you're in a job that you love, you don't want to leave to try something that is somewhat of an unknown. And I know that myself because, for a number of years in my Vodafone days, I was asked to swap roles with the general manager of sales. And it just didn't appeal to me because I loved marketing so much. And I probably stayed in my role for a couple of years too long. And I should have made that switch. So breadth of experience, I think, is incredibly important. And I would say to people that are perhaps earlier in their career than I am, have a look within your organization. Is there an opportunity to put your hand up to do a different role, to do a job swap, to get some experience in one of your peers' roles? And if there isn't, and you think you need new experience to get to your ambition, which may be a CMO role some way down the line, then perhaps it's time to look outside of that organization. But breadth of experience is incredibly important. I think the second thing I would say is be obsessed with the customer. Now, I know that's being customer obsessed, being customer centric is something that plenty of organizations talk about. But I think you've got to put your money where your mouth is. And being customer obsessed, I think for me, means initially using all of the rich insight that exists within the business. That could be data insight, that could be customer research, that could be reaching out to partners, media agencies, advertising agencies, to get all of that insight into the business to help you make better informed decisions. And then, importantly, at the end of your activity, make sure that you know how you've moved the needle in terms of customer success. So be obsessed about the customer and embed that in everything that you do. I think the third thing I would say for people that are aspiring to move into a CMO role is understand the commercials of the business. I think that's incredibly important, and be clear on how your accountability ladders up to that overall commercial result. And then there are probably just a couple of other things. Be a great storyteller. I think storytelling is so fundamental to getting buy-in from your team, whether that's your leadership team or your broader team, but also the broader organization. Sometimes great storytelling is required to get the right budget from the CFO. Sometimes great storytelling is required to get approval from the CEO. Sometimes great storytelling is just about taking the whole organization on an exciting journey, asking them to put more effort in to deliver a really strong result. And I'd say there are two other things that I would consider. The first is care for your team. I think that's incredibly important. It's important if you want to be a CMO, if you want to lead a large function, to care for your team. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have to make some tough decisions at some time, because I think to lead, a broader marketing function, it's a high performance team that you should aspire to deliver, but care needs to sit alongside that. And the final thing I would say is you need to build agility and resilience into your mindset. So agility means Really, you set a plan, it's going to be out of date after the first day. So, adapt it in small amounts or large amounts as you need to, but also you need to be resilient because things are not always going to go your way. But I think if you have the belief that tomorrow is going to be a better day after some tough times, resilience can be your friend.
Wow, amazing list of tips there. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege to go through everything with you this morning. I know that our audience will really enjoy listening to that and the advice that you shared and hearing your story. Richard, thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you, Susie. It's been lovely to talk to you.